Welcome to Developing the Leader Within podcast, the podcast that brings you leadership insights from the brightest minds shaping our world. Join us as we dive into conversation with trailblazers, innovators, and change makers, spanning every corner of the globe. Get ready to explore new perspectives, gain actionable insights, and become the leader the world needs today. Unleash your potential. Tune into Developing the Leader Within podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Let's embark on this transformative journey together. Developing the Leader Within podcast, leading beyond limits.
Welcome back, everyone. If you haven't subscribed, please do so right now, as it will help us getting this show to others and help us get to our next milestone. Today, we are speaking with Jeanette Mundy. Jeanette is the owner of Jeanette Mundy Coaching. She supports women who are ready to focus on themselves as a whole, to light their inner spark and fully express who they are. She is a fellow being practitioner and Thrive coach with Genesis. Jeanette, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Enrique. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I've been looking forward to this episode because ontology as a whole in the United States, it's not very well known, but we've been around it for years now as we've been certified in it. But folks, we will be speaking about leading from within, empowering women through ontological coaching. But before we get into that conversation, Jeanette, tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, okay. So I'm Australian. I was born in Melbourne, Australia. I grew up in a large family, 5 sisters. Mum and dad were, we were a sporting family. My dad was a swimming coach. My mum was a teacher and a manager of swim schools. And I grew up in a family that really valued working hard, success, actually, and they were really sort of successful at what they did in the swimming industry, and so I was immersed in a world of business, service, teaching, training, leadership, personal development. I kind of was immersed in that world for my entire life. I managed several swim schools myself as a young adult. And then I owned my own very successful swim school, which was fantastic. But after 27 years in the industry, I kind of went, I think I need something different. This is sort of not really fulfilling my cup anymore, or my potential. Even though I loved what I did and I was successful at what I did, I no longer wanted to be wet. I just, if so to speak, metaphorically and literally. So because I had set up many learning and development systems and programs and taught teachers, it was an easy transition into learning and development systems and development processes within organizations and leadership. So I did that. I don't know how I did it, but I just achieved that and went in there and taught teachers, and I kind of introduced them to this ontological approach, because I knew deep down inside that for anyone to be successful in any endeavor, they have to have a presence and a confidence in themselves. And skills and knowledge are one thing, but how you present yourself and how you apply yourself, that comes from within. And so I knew that, so I started introducing it as part of learning and development systems in the bigger picture, in the broader sense. So then, as I was going along in that process, I just was recognizing something in with me. I stopped on the side of the road one day and said, hang on a sec, what am I doing? My true passion has always been women and working with women. And as I've reinvented myself multiple times in my life, I love working with the woman who wants to reinvent herself, because she might have fit into the mold of what it means to be a woman. And, she's got this traditional life. And So I'm kind of really passionate about helping women who are in that transitional period of their life. Many of them are in midlife and they're navigating kind of that reinvention for themselves. So since 2015, I've run women's programs where I've worked really closely on one-on-one with women, but also just many of them have gone on to start their own businesses and become very successful at that, or more confidently stepped into leadership, but overall reimagined their own lives through the lens of having a deep sense of worth and purpose.
And I love all of that story, all of that background. Many people don't understand how they've been raised to be a leader. They choose not to be for whatever reason. Sometimes it's mostly fear of the unknown. But we are around a lot of leadership training and teaching from either our parents or some other adult or even siblings, right? And so
Mm.
for you to understand that, hey, swimming was great, but it's time for something new, right? You started to dig within, as we're going to be talking about the digging within. That is how I got exposed to ontology with Ashkan Tashford, right? And he has done a great job in allowing us to foster our within through these programs. So most people don't know ontological coaching. So, how does ontological coaching uniquely support women in developing their leadership identity and voice?
Well, generally speaking, ontological coaching works at the core of who we're being. So it goes beyond the surface strategies, it goes beyond the skills that we develop and the knowledge that we have and the positions, the roles. It goes beyond all of that. So this is really key for women, because for women to have a presence about them, to be a leader, they kind of need to have a presence about them. We all do, men and women. But for women, we've been shrinking ourselves down and playing small for so many years. What we need is to walk through the world with confidence, clarity, and authenticity. And so that's why ontological coaching is so powerful for women, because we're conditioned to play nice. There's this people-pleasing element to that, where we avoid being too much or too strong or too much of a leader. So we kind of put ourselves into a box, and it impacts on how assertive we are. In fact, we're confused about assertiveness. We don't know what it is because we've been conditioned to play nice. And so our current sort of vernacular around assertiveness is kind of where, oh, you're either put into the you're too bitchy category or you're too nice category. But hang on a sec, we've been conditioned to play nice, we've been told to play nice. So how do I step out of that? So you can imagine the confusion in that for a woman who is wanting to be a leader, when on one hand she's conditioned to play nice, and on the other hand she knows that she's going to have to find somewhere in that middle ground to be able to be a leader. And this is where ontological coaching helps them. It really helps them understand their conditioning and how that conditioning is impacting them now, so they can shift kind of the internal historical and societal conditioned narratives, then refine the language that they use about themselves, which is really crucial. And then once they've where they're doing that, then they can cultivate that embodied self-worth, which it is embodied, by the way. It's not something that's just happening in our head. It's not just mindset, which we think that it is mindset. This is where ontological coaching is very different, is that we are actually transforming our way of being. And then from there, for women, what's really exciting to see is where they can trust their inner voice and they can lead from that place of authenticity.
Now, you mentioned internal narratives, and I want to focus on that because there's a lot that happens from the mind to the heart and then, in the body. So, what are some of the most common internal narratives or belief systems that hold women back in leadership? And how do you guide them to shift those perspectives?
Well, some of the things that they might find themselves saying if they really listen closely. And by the way, you have to listen to yourself. You have to listen to what's going on, right? Because you're not going to necessarily hear it because you're going to be hearing all the judgments you're making about yourself. But it's it's things like, who am I to do this? What gives me the right? Because they've never really been put, because one of the sort of the historical things about women is that we're not leaders, men are leaders. And so we know that's changing. We can logically say that's changing. But in reality, we're still embodying that, Enrique. And that sort of puts us into that imposter syndrome mindset for ourselves, that who am I to do this? And then so there they start saying, I need to prove my worth before I take up space. Because for women, we don't like to take up space. Right. We don't think it's our right to take up space. I don't want to be seen as too much, too big, too loud. That one is me because I feel like sometimes I'm too loud. So you can imagine kind of sometimes I have to really check in with myself and go, hang on a second. What if I was just being myself, being authentic? Would I be, judging that? No, I wouldn't. And then there's another one. What if they don't like me? Or what if it's too late for me? Because the woman who's had the family and wants to go back to work and then she finds herself in midlife where there's also this sort of ageism kind of thing happening. So what if it's too late for me? And so the first thing to do, these are the stories that keep them hesitating and constantly sort of undervaluing themselves. So the first thing to do is to help to shift their awareness around these things that are going on for them and really unpacking where the beliefs are coming from in the first place, how those beliefs how they're languaging those beliefs for themselves, so what they're making it mean about themselves, and then recognizing that they're stories, they're not truths. And then we can begin to go on transforming them through language, through embodiment, and through action. So an example would be, who am I to do this? Well, who am I not to? Why should I think that I'm taking up too much space? It's just a powerful reframe. And we also focus on developing new ways of being, like vulnerability. So from the being framework, it's so that framework is so crucial here because we want women to be vulnerable. We want them to be authentic. We want them to be courageous and assertive and confident and resilient so that their leadership is sort of fueled by um, certainty and intentionality rather than self-doubt. And so we have to kind of we have to learn to not only reframe the language, but embody this new narrative for ourselves.
And I love that shift in the words because a simple interjection of not, you know, a lot of times I hear, why me? And if you say, why not me? You just took over the situation with a single word. And so what's ironic there is that one moment we feel powerless, and with a switch in a word, the next moment we're in control. And I can see those scenarios play out for women. They do play out for men as well, because depending on where they're from, their structure in society and all these other things, right? I had a friend that whose father told him when he looked up in the sky and saw a plane for the first time. This was in Africa, he said, "Wow, a plane." And his dad said, "Don't worry, son. That's not for our kind." And I'm
Oh,
like, "Whoa."
yeah, that's a powerful statement, right? That declares the future for that person right there. That's what
That,
it does. And
yeah.
Enrique, all of these narratives, they declare a future for ourselves.
Thankfully enough, he did not believe it. And so he is now a pilot. Take that.
My
So
goodness,
amazing.
incredible.
But
What a story.
yeah, well, talking about stories, because I know there are some women that are listening right now and saying, "Whoa, that was me. She just spoke about me. That's how I feel and that's how I think. And oh my
Mm.
goodness, what am I doing? Giving up the little power that I do have or identity that I have for this or that." So, can you share a transformative story where ontological coaching empowered a woman to step into a more authentic and impactful leadership role?
One of my clients, she built a career over the span of 30 years. And although she had a leadership role as a team leader, she was experiencing bullying in the workplace and was being undermined. And so she started to question herself. And I think really she was questioning herself anyway. But this was creating more questions for herself. And so she made herself smaller and smaller, where she was hesitating to speak up, judging herself. And it really significantly affected her self-esteem. But she also had this internal conflict going on where she really wanted to make a meaningful difference, but she lacked the courage to pursue it. And so through ontological coaching, she uncovered this, who she is authentically, her unique being. And she started to recognize her true calling. And so through the process, she stopped allowing others to define her worth. But it really took something. It really did, because she wasn't being assertive. She was lacking in confidence. So you can imagine how that is for a woman, for anyone. But for her as a woman, she was on one hand had a calling that she wanted to do more, and on the other hand, she's got this conflict of, but hang on, why me? So in the process of working with her, she started to develop courage to stand in her power. And instead of sort of shrinking in the face of intimidation, she became assertive and confident and unapologetically stood up for herself. But she did it in the way that worked for her. And I think that that's a crucial thing, because I think some women will often label themselves as, oh, I'm not a confident person, or I'm quiet, I'm shy. And she would do all that. But hang on a second, you can still be quiet and be assertive. You can still be a person that doesn't like to take the floor, that appears to be shy, and be assertive and confident. And you can also be a leader. So we can do all these things. This is a great story for that, because she is now the owner of her own not-for-profit organization. So she did that in this process. She still has a full-time job, but she's got this not-for-profit organization helping the youth to realize their potential. And this is amazing. So as we speak, she's currently developing that as developing a profitable arm of that business. Also, she's running women's leadership groups. And that's within her organization, but also beyond that, which is helping women in their careers, with their confidence, with their courage, with their assertiveness, all those things that she once struggled with and still has to work on. We all have to continue this work, right? But she's developed a healthy relationship with resilience, so she no longer gets emotionally derailed when something happens. She knows she can automatically stand in her power when something happens. She no longer sees challenges as threats, but opportunities for growth. And she's finding the synergy between her corporate life and in leadership, because she is a leader in her corporate life and her entrepreneurial vision. So I'm really excited to see where this goes for her in her passion to empower other women. It's really exciting. So once she felt these things were impossible, but now this is her next chapter. This is who she is now.
Well, I tell you, I'm plumb proud of that lady. You think about that story, you just listen to it. Folks, we have a net for creating some language around our potential. Maybe you picked it up from a parent, maybe you picked it up from a sibling, maybe you pick it up from a family member, maybe, and like in this case, you got bullied in the workforce and then you adopted that language. But all of that negative, unproductive language, it's really steered to make sure that you don't get to where you're supposed to be. And so the moment you start to, and you mentioned this, a healthy relationship, right? And we know healthy relationship, unhealthy relationship with this or that and the other. When you get from an unhealthy relationship to a healthy one, that's when things like this story end up happening. And I hope that you're listening. If you have developed some type of language around keeping you down, now what's funny, Jeanette, is that they start the work and we end up finishing it for them sometimes because we just continue that narrative over our lives and speaking things over our lives. But in your experience, how does language shape a woman's leadership presence, and what practices can women adopt to use language more powerfully?
Good question, because we're immersed in language as humans. So it's the basis for all of our interactions, all of our relationships. And if we think of it in that way, we can think, well, if it's the basis of all of that, then we're using language to constantly make and manage our commitments and to fulfill our promises. And in organizations, that's what's going on. People are being intentional and they're trying to fill commitments. And so a leader, generally a leader, but a female leader, when she starts to use powerful language and she has that presence of mind to be able to use that powerful language, you can see the way I'm speaking now. I feel grounded in myself. I feel when she's doing that, and that's actually embodied, she's going to make clear requests. She's going to ask powerful questions. She's going to empower her team and her leaders to be their authentic selves, come forward with their concerns, make decisions, and she will make decisions that are not always popular decisions to make, but ones that she really needs to make, right? So, she might go from saying, oh, I just think, oh, but I'm sorry, oh, I don't know what this means, I can't make sense of all of this. So she's diminishing her authority when she's doing that. So what we will do, one of the first things we'll do is like a practical shift, a reframing. So instead of say, I just wanted to say, you can say, I want to add. So you're adding to the conversation, not I just wanted to say. So instead of saying, oh, sorry, sorry to bother you, but you can say, I need a moment of your time. And then instead of saying, I think this might be a good idea, you say, I believe this is the best approach. So things like that, which are more powerful, but they're also more assertive. They're more direct, straight to the point. So it seems really small, but they actually have a massive impact on who you're being and how people are seeing you in your leadership. So your perception of being, your own perception of who you are as a leader changes, and people's perception of who you are as a leader changes.
Well, I'm over here smiling and shaking my head because I envisioned myself in a meeting room and hearing that from a female leader. And
Mm.
it just struck me like, yes, that's what you want to say. And a
Mm.
lot of times, folks, we are not looking for the right language. We're not looking for the right words. We're using common thrown around type of words that really subserviate us to whatever environment it is versus saying, here am I, hear my roar. I'm fixed. I know what I'm talking about. This is
Yeah.
what I think. When you say I think, right, it's already saying, I don't know, right? But when you say, this is the best way to go forward from here, that doesn't leave too much room for this, that, and the other. So, with being mindful, obviously, of the environment, but also understanding that you have a role to play. And if you diminish that, then who's playing it? Because no one can be you. And you have to bring yourself completely to whatever conversation may be having or going on in order for us to see all of you. And they're
Well,
very powerful.
yeah, that's right. So if you consider that all of these, shrinking down, being subservient, all of the women narratives that we might have been born into and we've just carried with us, gathered along the way in our lives, that's not how you started in this world. You're valuable. You were born valuable, so you started there, and you've just collected all of this along the way. So you have to be able to go back and go, well, hang on a second, what have I learned and how have I learned to be, so that you can start to be. This is your authentic, unique self, the one that you were born with. All of the language that you're using, that you might be using, is what you have been taught. And so it is in there to be powerful. It is in there to be a really strong leader. It's in there. It's in you.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there are women that are obviously listening that are in their power. They're running things, they
Of course.
are leading teams, they're heads of this and heads of that. And so
Mm.
they're in this role that is challenging traditional norms. So what advice would you give to a woman leader who or leaders who are navigating environments where their leadership approach might challenge traditional norms?
Well, I think the first thing is that it's okay for you to be different. You're just be grounded in who you are. That's a strength. Your difference is a strength. So it might be easy for me to say value who you are and value that difference, but this is, too long we've conformed to outdated models of leadership. And I think that instead of doing that, we can redefine leadership on our own terms. That if we bring this edge of vulnerability, if we bring that to an organization, how might that benefit the organization? Think about it in those terms. Like, if you're vulnerable, if you're showing up as yourself and you're authentic and you're empathetic and you're using your intuition and you're collaborating and that's who you are, that doesn't make you less of a leader. That makes you a leader that is in tune with what's needed in the world today. That's the power of a woman's leadership, right? So you might feel resistance because you sort of, you're in the traditional, the norm. But when you're challenged, that's the time to kind of sit and be grounded in who you are. And just, tell yourself, no, I'm not too much. This is who I am. You can change history. You actually can have a part in making a change. And I think also find your people, find a community. You actually don't have to navigate leadership on your own. So if you think that you're staying silent in your head about things, or you're becoming stressed or agitated, or you've got some doubt around who you are as a leader, find other female leaders and be in communication with them. Build relationships that uplift you and remind you of your worth, not those relationships that seemingly knock you down. You want to be encouraged to keep going when the going gets tough, right?
Absolutely. Today I had a conversation similar around that to community, right? And the gentleman asked me, what can I do for you? And I said, well, you could do this. That will definitely help. And then I reflected on, because, you have people that are around you, and just because they're around you don't mean they're cheering for you. Right? That doesn't equal.
Yeah.
But there are some people, and they stand out to you because they're always encouraging you or giving you a word that will lift you up, or they're offering assistance of some sort, right? Even if they don't know, or both of you don't know what that looks like yet. And so that community is around you. And that's, to your point, that's the one that you have to surround yourself by, because the world is full of negativity. It is full of naysayers. It is full of people, the crabs in the bucket, right? It's full of it. And so I love that suggestion. And for those of you listening, consider your environment, consider the people around you. You will be amazed how much, if you change those to the positive, how much and how drastic that will change your outcomes, from day to day.
Absolutely.
What do you have coming up, and where could the viewer or the listener follow you and support you?
Okay. So you can, well, first of all, if there any of your viewers would, are interested in one-on-one coaching, they can just direct message me and open up a conversation around that. I think that's the best way. And they can do that on LinkedIn or Instagram even, or through my website, Butterfly Effect Leadership. But there's another exciting venture that's happening, Enrique, and that is that I have a new venture, a business partnership with Dr. Mariana Alexander, and you know her. So we have oh my goodness, we have some incredible things coming up for women who are ready to stop playing small and fully step into their worth and their wildness in midlife. So we're calling it Midlife Worthy and Wild. And so we have a range of ways to start this journey. We're about to launch a podcast, so we're excited about that. And we're going to have things like just little testers for women that they can just see, get clarity on what might be holding them back, and challenges for them to see, for those who want to really step into their power, and then transformation talks. And we're providing it like a reinvention roadmap, and we'll have a signature program, and eventually we're having retreats. So it's going to be very exciting. But if you want to learn about it, or you want to follow us, you can actually DM us at Midlife Worthy and Wild on Instagram, and we'll make sure that we let you know when things are coming up.
Outstanding. Well, folks, we'll make sure to have all of that as part of the show notes and video for you guys to reach out to Jeanette. I'm excited for you. I know you two are going to be doing some great work. Mariana's on the podcast here coming up in the future, so can't wait to have her with us. Folks, today's episode is sponsored by Global Trends Magazine, The Outlier Project, Fantail Services, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, Ascend Meditations, and Chop AI. And if you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know by leaving a comment. And make sure to catch us streaming on Parade Deck, on Roku, and Amazon Fire TV on the Purpose Place Network, and catch our Going Deeper Within content on the Lions Guide Academy. Tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle, and as we like to end the show, success to you.